各位观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看 JxJ 论坛，由我 Jimmy 马健与我们的好朋友 Jim Noteware 为我们讨论这个礼拜的时事。Jim, long time no see.
Yeah, it's been several weeks. So
it felt like a lifetime because of
it's good to be back.
Looking forward to the weekly conversation, but this week in particular, the election results. Let's start with local here at Harris County. To me, I was shocked. Let's be fair. I was shocked. I don't want to say this one. I was shocked. I want to explain to our audience that midterm elections like this usually will always be historically a referendum on the current administration. And there's a way that democracy works because there will be a balance. The predicted red wave did not happen. However, there were so many local races that went the other way. What happened in Harris County, Jim?
Well, I don't really know because the results are so, I'll use the word unbelievable. And there have been so many well-conceived accusations about wrongdoing at the polls and incompetence of the administration of the entire voting effort throughout the county, particularly in Republican precincts, that I don't think we have heard the last of it yet. I get probably 2 or 3 emails and texts a day, today and yesterday, describing a lot of the problems that were and a lot of short-term analyses, observations of what's going on. And I think the reaction is just now getting started. We have not heard the end of this.
Are you saying that the results are not valid? Because
yes, there are serious accusations that the results are not valid. Yes.
I am very concerned that if this is the trend that I know that some of the issues, I don't know, referring to the same problems. For example, extending it by an hour. Getting an injunction to extend it for an hour and then being struck down by the state. But yet, in an overwhelmingly Republican county, such as Bell County, who also had problems with opening it in the morning, extended an hour, but the state did not question that decision. Why is it only here in the Democratic-leaning Harris County?
Don't know. There's so many unanswered questions. I just want to withhold judgment. Other than it's unbelievable.
They're not overwhelming losses. I mean, they were very narrow losses.
Very narrow. And interestingly, all of the major county races, the county judge, the 2 precinct chairs that were up, and the county treasurer, all were within the 51-49 band. They were all that close. Some a little closer than others, but well within the range that there will be, under state law, a required recount of the votes. But there is so much evidence emerging about incompetence and wrongdoing at certain polling places, running out of printer ink to record the ballots.
Paper.
I mean, how can you be ill prepared for that?
Jim, when I voted on Tuesday, I flew back from a foreign country just to make sure I could vote. I like to vote on voting day. I also like to observe what's going on. I'm very fortunate because here in my district, here in Fort Bend County, I had 4 pages. It took me 5 minutes. Even if there was a line, without a line, probably 2 minutes, literally just 4 pages. But I was told here in Harris County, you have 96 pages to go through. Is that true? 96 pages?
Oh, it took me, and I knew what I was looking at and looking for. It probably took me 15, 20 minutes to vote.
And this is, you're about as well-versed with the candidates as anyone, and it still took you that long.
I didn't have to decide. I didn't have to think. I didn't get confused. I just went right through. But it was still a major exercise, and there were people there a long time. A lot of people were asking for help. And then that's a whole nother issue. When people ask for help, there are strict rules about how the staff that works for the county can provide the assistance. But I'm actually thinking a lot of people had their votes cast by the staff there rather than their own. But
whoa, Jim, this is some serious stuff we're talking about.
Yeah. But there's a great deal at stake. But look at the results. Look at the results. I mean, you went from 3 to 2 to 4 to 1 on the county commissioner's court, despite all the crime and all the publicity and all of the polling and all of the communication throughout the media.
Jack Hagel lost. Now, Jack Hagel lost in part because he was reapportioned about 6 months ago. He, as a 10-year incumbent, he was forced into a geographic area that was brand new to him, and they left behind his longtime district. The other 3 members of the county commissioner's court basically took away his district. I mean, that was all done with malice aforethought. Absolutely. Was it illegal? Probably not. I mean, the Republicans have been redistricted for the last decade. For 2 decades, they've been redistricting to their advantage, and they're still losing little by little. So this is kind of a quid pro quo. I mean,
this was done by the other 3, the Democrat members, in part to take away Hagel's advantage, to make him lose the benefit of the incumbent advantage. Yeah.
Either way, this is shocking. There is no longer any kind of balance. As we said at the top of the program, democracy works when there's check and balances, this is a 2-party system, there's no doubt. Just like I don't want to see a complete red state and red city. Now when it's complete, I'm still very surprised. Even nationwide results, we could see that former President Trump's influence has finally waned. His candidates did not win.
It's worse than that.
I'm happy.
Yeah. Not only did his candidates not win, but there's a very, very strong sense in the Republican Party, myself among them, that the Republicans today would have 53, 54 Senate seats, but for Donald Trump's influence in the primaries. And I'm happy to go through how that works.
Please, because I would be the first person to celebrate the Republican Party from finally moving on from him and from the fiasco he's created, and restart and going back to find the root and the heart of what Republican Party has meant before Trump came along, and to lead this country back to moderation, to crossing the aisle, to hear voices from both, to think of us as Americans as a whole instead of by party line. This is not a cult. We do not plead allegiance to him. And I hope this will be the case. And Governor Ron DeSantis, no matter what you think of him, smashingly won. And this clipped Mr. Trump's wings quite a bit, and he's livid. So could you explain to our audience what happened and why it's more than what the media is portraying? How big of a dent and damage has this done to Trump's perceived candidacy for the presidency?
The biggest loser by far on Tuesday was Donald Trump, and that cost the second biggest loser, which was the Republican Party. And here's what I mean by that. There were 3 and arguably 4 Senate candidates that Trump endorsed in the primary that one lost. Number one, they lost. And number 2, it was totally predictable that they would lose. And this, what I'm about to tell you, is something unseen. The candidate in New Hampshire lost pretty big. The candidate in Arizona lost pretty big. It's not concluded in Georgia. Herschel Walker, I believe he will lose. He is behind. He's within the runoff, so there will be a runoff. So it's too soon to say. But New Hampshire and Arizona had extremely popular governors who easily could have won the Senate seats had they run and been nominated. They refused to run because Donald Trump had accused them of not being patriotic because they would not fall in line with his big lie about the election being stolen. And they both declined to run. They would have had easy. Governor Ducey in Arizona easily would have beat Mark Kelly, and Governor Sununu and he was easily reelected, over 65% of the vote in New Hampshire. Could have beaten and would have easily beaten Bolduc in the primary, and would have easily won over Maggie Hassan.
And conservative media is not talking about this because they fear of poking.
They're not yet, because some of the conservative media is afraid of Trump too, which is another problem. But also, Herschel Walker was a terrible candidate. There were others running for him, and the big one where the Republicans lost a seat was in Pennsylvania. And David McCormick was a far stronger candidate in the primary than Mehmet Oz. And Trump backed Oz, and he won the primary by that much. But had McCormick won, he definitely would have beaten Fetterman, because there was
Trump's
a lot.
Push helped Oz in the primary, but his push also helped the Republican Party lose that race in the actual
4 strong Senate seats. That's what he did this time. What he did 2 years ago, between the time he lost in November and the time that Georgia had the runoff of those 2 Senate seats, Raphael Warnock and John Officer, had the normal candidacies prevailed without Trump pushing.
His extremist candidates, his loyalty
candidates,
instead of career.
They're not popular with the broad base of the Republican Party.
Because they don't have the experience nor the know-how or the familiarity with voters.
We would have had 2 more seats. It would have been 52-48 these last 2 years. I mean, this is amazingly costly. And when Trump supports somebody like Manager in Arizona or Bolduc in New Hampshire, he doesn't give him any money. He just goes and does a rally. And sometimes those rallies in a general election are as harmful as they are helpful. In other words, they scare away independents, because there's a truism here. If you do in simplified terms a spectrum where Republicans are on the right and Democrats are on the left, each of those in most states is something less than 40%. Which means that there's 20 to 25% or so in the middle. Those independent, non-aligned voters are the ones that really decide the election. And so what everybody that wants to win the election knows they have to do, they have to shore up their base and get them out and get them motivated. But that's not enough. They have to appeal to the people in the middle. And the big story coming out of Tuesday's results is the Republicans were not successful in attracting the independents to their cause. They thought very much that they would because of the strength of the argument of inflation, energy problems, open borders, all of that, all of which I fully subscribe to, et cetera, et cetera. But we did not make that case to the people in the middle, and therefore it didn't work. And so therefore they were all predicting a major red wave. I saw one of the pundits in the New York Times said yesterday, the red wave turned into a pink dribble that never reached the shore. And I think that's a perfect way to say it, because it didn't work. Now, are they going to take over the House? Yes. But instead of this much, it's this much. And
when is
what,
go ahead. No. What do you think about?
What do I think about what?
You said when you think of the Republican Party?
I think the Republican Party needs to do a major introspection and figure out what went wrong.
That's exactly what I was going to say. When is this reckoning going to begin? That we need to have a two-party system. We need to have a viable Republican Party. We have to. If this the other way around, we will say the same about the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. We cannot have absolute power and absolute corruption. Trump needs to go. And
Trump needs to go. And I think he's met his Waterloo right now, because when you look at the strength of DeSantis's win, and you know that Trump has now started making fun of him with those funny little names. He calls him Ron DeSanctimonious. So basically, Trump has declared war on one of his major supporters, which shows that there's no loyalty between Trump and the rest of the party.
There never has been. That's why this candidate is, when you ask for his endorsement, it is really a poison pill.
And one of the most acerbic relationships Trump had was with Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, who got reelected by astounding margin. I think it was 54-46 over Stacey Abrams. A very, very strong showing. And there, you can go across the country and you can talk about other things as well. In Colorado, a guy named Joe O'Dea ran against Michael Bennet for the Senate, and O'Dea got very close. I think it was 51-49, something like that. It was a very close race, and he came out of nowhere, and he openly defied Trump. He criticized Trump, et cetera, et cetera. But the point I'm making is, even by doing that, he almost won. And then Trump backed a very high-profile Republican incumbent for one of the House seats in Colorado, Lauren Boebert, and she lost in a very strong Republican district. But people just had enough. They've had enough of this BS, and so it's time to move on. And I think more and more, because everything with Trump is a one-way street.
He should not represent conservative values. He should not be the one
representing Christian values. He actually doesn't. He represents values that pay allegiance to Donald Trump.
He's hijacked the party. We've said that for years.
Now, in hindsight, I would say that the Republican Party after George Bush, W. Bush, was listless and
lost its way.
And I think it lost its way during the Bush administration. That's a whole nother story. But it was decimated during the Obama years. And our speakers of the House, John Boehner, and
started with the Tea Party,
didn't know what the hell to do, and it was tweedledee, tweedledum, fumbling, saying no to everything. The one guy that I have tremendous respect for is Mitch McConnell. I mean, he held a lot of things together in the Senate. I know he's controversial in his own right, but he's done his job very admirably. And but then Trump actually rescued the Republican Party and gave it a lot of definition. And if you look, and I have to hand it to Trump, this is 2016, he beat one by one 16 establishment Republicans in the primaries. Then he got elected, etc. We all know that. I don't need to
he defeated one of the most unpopular presidential candidates in history, in Hillary Clinton. One of the ultimate.
He did. But I think the story of that election and the story of the one in 2020 was Donald Trump won because many people thought Hillary was worse. Joe Biden won because many people thought Donald Trump was worse. So we've had two presidential elections where the negatives outweigh the positives. That's a terrible comment. A terrible comment.
It is.
I don't think so. I don't think either Trump or Biden will get renominated for the 2024 election.
Well, it looks like Governor DeSantis is riding an all-time high. I do not see anybody else in the Democratic Party that could be nominated. Who do they have?
There might be some surprises. Depends. I think that the surprise, the silent killer, may be Michelle Obama.
No, that's just a rumor. You believe that?
I don't know. No. I don't believe it. I'm not proposing it. Anything else. No. I'm saying that if she were willing to run, I don't think
she would be a strong candidate.
That's the point I'm making. She's extremely popular. She's extremely knowledgeable. And guess who she has in her hip pocket? Okay.
That's the first I've heard. Wow, that's coming out of the left field.
So there's room for surprises out here, Jimmy.
As I explained to folks about midterms, it's supposed to be a referendum on the administration, but the Republican Party has really fumbled these issues. I mean, starting from Supreme Court, starting from abortion rights. I mean, these are things that, like you said, even from 2 years ago, there should be an absolute majority already. Because of Trump, because of losing his way, because of making it more extreme politics, it's come down to this. Let's move away from the federal, from the United States Congress, and come down to our local elections, which, to be honest, it affects our daily lives even more. Okay, a lot of voters have to realize that our local elections will affect us much more.
Mm-hmm.
How did this? You already said that there's some technicalities, there's issues plaguing Harris County, the process. But the fact is, we do know that it took you 15, 20 minutes. Is not everybody I've seen that did go and vote has said that it's extremely prohibitive. I mean, it's 96 pages and the lines were long. And for elderly or for working class, blue collar, this is a luxury. It is to go vote.
Mm-hmm.
Many people still did. Excuse me. So what do you think will be the outcome with Harris County? Excuse me.
Well, I think what really it shows is more and more of Harris County has turned Democrat. And people on the Democrat side vote for the party rather than the candidate. And it doesn't matter what the candidate does or says, they vote for the party.
No, I went down by each position, by each race. I went down and picked.
Yeah, but I think you're in the minority.
You're right, because we're familiar with the candidates, we're familiar with their politics. But they did take away straight ticket voting, which
they did. But so people now just do it one step at a time instead. So you get the same answer.
Well, I was surprised that Governor Abbott won by this margin. I like Beto. Well, I really do.
The other thing is that incumbents won big. And even across the country, incumbents won big. Very few turnover, very few incumbents got defeated this time. And
unlike the blue wave from 4 years ago.
Right. And that's right. And even when there was an open seat, in most cases, the incumbent party won. There were a few counterexamples, like governor in both Massachusetts and Maryland had been a fairly moderate Republican. But both of those changed from a Republican to a Democrat. Not surprising given the political attitudes of the state, and also not surprising about how Trump influenced the primary for the gubernatorial candidate in Maryland. There was no way that Trump's handpicked guy, who did win the primary, the Republican primary, there was no way that the Maryland voters were ever going to elect that guy, and he got trounced. I think it was something like 70-30.
Say about Trump's poisonous, traitorous influence, the trail of destruction. What he's done is not just his 4 years. Like you said, it's gonna affect us for the next decade. The destruction he's left.
Yeah. And there's more to the story too. The abortion issue is major, and I think myself included, most Republicans underestimated its appeal as a political issue to the Democrats. It was a very big motivator that brought out people, mostly Democrats, but it also caused some Republicans, particularly women, to vote against Republican candidates.
Do you blame them?
Well, I'm pro-life, so I think people have to vote their conscience on things like that. So I'm never going to question how somebody else made their decision to vote for who they did. I don't think that's up to me to do. I can only explain what my position would be. But I do think most Republicans, the leadership who, like me, are pro-life, underestimated how sensitive it is to many women of all economic and political persuasions. And as an example, what happened in Kansas when a statewide referendum occurred, Kansas voters overwhelmingly wanted to provide abortion rights in that statewide. It wasn't the legislature; it was a statewide vote. And Kansas is an overwhelmingly Republican state, so for it to win so handily, a huge number of Republicans had to vote pro-abortion, pro-choice.
We have to understand, we have to discuss this. You would be considered very progressive and open-minded throughout your life, coming from California, but now you're considered a conservative. Back in the 70s, 80s, you supported social justice. You supported civil rights, and you still do, and so do I.
Sure.
But yet, because of the extremism, there's, amongst, let's say, the liberals, I will be considered very conservative. There's so many issues we agree on, but yet, because of this two-party system, there's no respite. There's no compromise. It is.
And look what's changed in the 40, 50 years since I was growing up. For instance, civil rights. One of my heroes is Martin Luther King, Jr. I mean, I think he did a phenomenal job. And I think if he was still alive today, he would be very old. But if he would have continued his influence for another 20 or 30 years after he was assassinated in 1968, I think our civil rights would be very different now. I think the civil rights leaders are motivated by very different goals, different values, etc., than Martin Luther King. They do it in his name, but it's absolutely a reversal from his philosophies and values. So, but things have changed, and they continue to change. People look at Donald Trump and say, "Oh, he's conservative." Well, in some ways, maybe he is. I mean, some of his supporters were carrying Confederate flags, which just made my skin crawl. Okay. But I don't think he's conservative fiscally. Not at all. Not at all. He was one of the biggest borrowers, but of course, he's a real estate developer. He loves to borrow. So, anyway.
Jim, what you told us today is not really discussed in mainstream media. There are a lot of insights I think we shall continue next week. I hope our viewers will tune in to see what the final, because there's still 3 seats that are still up in the air. We need to discuss furthermore down the road. Well, how would this affect us in the next 2 years, the next 4 years, even the next decade? To continue delving deeper into what it means. And also, we were at a Houston 80-20 Asian American PAC dinner. I believe every endorsed candidate, or majority, I think 90% of the endorsed candidates won, which is a very high rate considering the history of 80-20's endorsement.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Good. Yeah, most of them, not all, but most of them were incumbents. So, and incumbents did have a very good day.
Like you said. So we want to congratulate the candidates, whether they're Republican or Democrat. And we shall continue this discussion next week, as the results of the election will matter. It does matter a lot. But the market has spoken, Jim. The market has spoken. Today was one of the best days in the market since 2020.
Yeah, I hope it holds.
Hope it holds.
Okay.
Take care, Jim. Take care, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, guys.
Good luck.